Hey, fourth graders, welcome back. My name is Mrs. Lawson, and I'm so excited that you're here today. So, what we're discussing today, I've been trying to decide, do you like porpoises in peril better, or are you more of a Mary Anning fan? Which one's your favorite? Today, we are spending our lesson comparing the two texts and kind of diving deep to see where those two texts are similar and where they're different. So, which one's your favorite? I don't know if I could decide. They're both really cool. So, we're on lesson 13, and our learning intention today is we are learning to compare and contrast events in which researchers and scientists approach their task. We will know we are successful today when we can refer back to the text to explain how scientists are similar and different, and we're going to do that together. And then we're going to also use a Venn diagram to organize our information. So let's see what you have for your foundational skill today. It is one of my favorite things. You get to go and read this passage called Solo Sailing. So you're going to have words like this. Adventure. You're going to have an adventurer in there. You're going to have computers, diver, navigator. I'm going to let you figure out the rest on your own. So while you read, you're really going to focus on getting those words and decoding those words that have the ER and OR at the end, because that's what we've been working on. You're going to record yourself, and then you're going to listen and see how you did. So first thing we're going to do today is we're going to compare and contrast. What types of events using a scientific context are described in the in these texts? I was like, 3 texts, we only read 2. So we're going to go back and look in the text, because if you remember from how we can be successful today, we can't just pull these out of our head. We have to go back in the text and really dig deep and see, these events and how they're described. So let's start on the first page over here with Reggie. It says, "What's that for?" Kate asked. "I think we should analyze the water," Reggie said. "I have a feeling there's something in that shouldn't be there, in it that shouldn't be there, and it's driving the fish away." "Is that your hypothesis? What you're trying to prove?" Kim asked. "That's right," Reggie said as he filled the bottle with a sample of seawater. With a marker, he labeled it surface beach water and added the date and time. He used a thermometer to measure its temperature, and then he also measured the air temperature. "I need another sample from deeper in the water, and then I'll compare the two." So if we're looking at that page, we're trying to figure out, how is he being like a scientist? What about that is scientific? What do you think, fourth graders? I think, well, first he made a hypothesis, which is something we do a lot in science, where we're trying to prove that it's true. Then his approach to this mission of finding the difference between what's happening with the water and driving the porpoises away and the fish, he's going to take this and he's going to test it. And that's very scientific. He's going to test the temperature. He's going to test, what else did he say? Test the temperature, and then he wants to measure what the temperature is outside, and then he's going to do some other tests on it. So I think that when he takes that water sample, that is something very scientific. On the next page, another thing that the science squad does that's scientific. While I read, see if you can figure out what it is. "Well, that was interesting," said Jada as they walked up the beach. Kim nodded in agreement. "Let's get a snack and wait for the others to get back," he suggested. They headed to a nearby crab shack and sat down at the table. Jada started snapping pictures of the view as they waited for their food to arrive. But this one's a little tricky. So right now it might not seem scientific, but later they use this to help them solve the problem. Do you remember what it is? It's those pictures that Jada's taking. So even though she's just snapping pictures now, they actually take those pictures out later, and they help them solve the problem. So just taking pictures, that is evidence, and that is proof when you're working in science. Now let's skip over to Mary Anning. So we know the science squad is doing scientific methods with how they solve the problem. Now, how is Mary acting like a scientist? She made detailed drawings of the fossils she found so she would remember them. She examined one fossil and compared it to another one. How are they similar? How were they different? Why? Mary wanted to know. In the evening before she went to bed, Mary wrote to scientists in other places. She asked them questions and then waited eagerly for the scientists to write back. So what do you think? Well, it is something we're kind of doing right now, actually. We're comparing and contrasting, which makes us high-level readers, which makes us really thinking hard. So it's the same thing with science. If you're comparing and contrasting what you find, that is something that scientists do all of the time. Another thing that she does that is making her use a scientific method is that these detailed drawings she's making. They're very helpful later on, and people come and start finding fossils that are similar, and they help her keep track of her data as she finds things. All right, so we can also not just compare scientific methods, we can also compare our character. So we can compare and contrast characters in a text by looking at their actions. So let's look back and see how both the Science Squad and Mary work. So let's see what happens. So I want you to pause for a second. I just showed you that Venn diagram that we are going to do together. So what I want you to do is I want you to get your piece of paper in your notebook. I'm going to grab my empty notebook here, and I'm going to just, it doesn't have to be perfect. I'm going to draw my 2 circles. Oh my gosh, that's not very great at all. You're going to do that really quick, and then you're going to label the left side the Science Squad. And then on the right side, who we're going to put, you think? We're going to put Mary. So it should look like this. You got the Science Squad and we have Mary. And then if you've done a Venn diagram before, in the middle, it's what they have in common. So if you need more time to make your Venn diagram, pause right now, and you can keep working on that. If not, we're going to keep moving on, and we're going to look at what the Science Squad did. So we're looking at their actions. How did they solve this? That evening, the Science Squad met in Jada's room to report their findings. Cam and Jada filled in Kate and Reggie on the interview they had conducted with the fishermen. As they ran through the part about the barge, Cam mentioned the DDJ initials the fishermen had seen on the side of the barge. DDJ, DDJ, Kate muttered. Where have I seen that before? Wait! The rest of the Science Squad turned to look at Kate. I saw it this morning, she continued. That rude man who stole our taxi, his briefcase said DDJ on the side. I'm sure of it. Cam interrupted her. And in the crab shack, I smelled that odd smell again, a sort of citrus and cedar smell. You went to the crab shack without us? Said Kate, disappointed. Hang on, said Jada. What about those photos I took at the crab shack? Maybe we should take a look at them. Cam passed me your laptop. Ding, ding, ding. See, those pictures came back if you don't remember. Jada quickly uploaded the pictures and began flicking through them one by one. Looking at them carefully, suddenly she spotted something. Look, there, she cried to the rest of the team. The team peered over her shoulder, and there in the background of the photo was the man from the taxi holding his briefcase. Sure enough, it had the letters DDJ on the side of it. Jada zoomed in and studied the man's pictures closely. I think I'll use my picture recognition software to find out who this guy is, she said. It only took a few minutes before Jada had a name. So I don't think we need to go any further, because how did Jada solve, what were her actions? How did she solve the question? She used her picture recognition software. So keep that in your brain for when we fill out our Venn diagram in a minute, because is that how Mary's going to solve her stuff? Can she put things into a picture recognition system and find fossils? Let's see how she works scientifically. After much talking and arguing, the scientists named the creature. They called it fish lizard, or ichthyosaur. The ichthyosaur was put on display so everyone could see it. When people asked who found this creature, sometimes Mary's name was mentioned, but most of the time no one talked about Mary. The men who studied the creature and named it were mentioned instead. They were scientists. They were experts. Mary was just a poor girl without much education who was lucky to find the creature. What did she know? She knew plenty of things, and as the years passed by, she learned more and more. She cut open dead fish on her kitchen table so she could see how they looked inside. It was messy work, but Mary wanted to learn all that she could about fish. Maybe she thought that this knowledge would help her understand fish that lived in the past. She made detailed drawings of the fossils she found so she would remember them. She examined one fossil and compared it to another. How are they similar? How were they different? Why? Mary wanted to know. And I think that's really cool because why are they different? I agree. In the evening, before she went to bed, Mary wrote to scientists in other places. She asked them questions and then waited eagerly for the science to write back. Mary was too poor to buy books, so whenever she could, she borrowed other people's books about science. After she had read them, sometimes several times, she wrote down the important ideas. Mary didn't know at the time, but she was doing the same work that all scientists did. She was asking questions, gathering information, and making drawings and notes of everything she studied. All right, so let's look at this Venn diagram. I want to start by how are they similar? So this is going to be an inference we have to make because they don't tell us Mary's like the science squad because. So we have to use that brain of ours and think, how is this science squad like Mary? So I want you to take a second and just think, how are they similar? I kind of think back to that lesson where we described Jada. And what are some qualities that we use to describe her? Well, I remember one thing I said is that she's kind of curious. I think I said that. But I think that something that they both have in common is that they're curious. They want to know the answers. So if you're curious, you're asking questions, you're trying to figure things out. I think the science squad is definitely like that. And I think that Mary's like that too. So I hope that you figured that out without me, fourth graders. Another thing that they both have in common is that they're focused. They both have a goal and they both want to learn and they want to figure out the problem. Mary wants to figure out about all these animals that lived long ago, and the science squad wants to figure out what's happening with the porpoises. And the last thing that I thought of, hopefully you thought of it too, is that they're very detailed. They don't just slack off and kind of do it a little bit. They're very committed to finding the answers to their problems. So Mary read all of these books multiple times and took notes. Tells me she's very detailed and she wants to get all the information. Science Squad is the same way. They don't slack off. They go deep into the water to get their water supplies, right? So hopefully you found those, or if you have other ones, that is great too. Keep those on there and show your teacher later. So let's look at the Science Squad. How are they different than Mary? What do they have access to that Mary doesn't have access to? Hopefully you figured out that they have access to the internet, guys. They have access to that photo recognition system. So I said the big difference between their actions and Mary's was that they were able to use the picture recognition software to solve their problem. Mary didn't have access to that kind of stuff. Then with Mary, we already talked about she didn't have access to internet. It also talked about today how she was really poor. So how did she figure things out with her research? What did she do? Hopefully you can pause the video here and figure this out on your own and look back because I know that you can do it. I said she makes her own drawings to help with scientific discoveries. So those detailed drawings she makes and those detailed notes that she takes, that's how she figures out her scientific discoveries. All right, fourth graders, you can pause the video here if you need to finish up that Venn diagram, but you did a great job and I hope that you have some more information besides what I put to add on. All right, one more question today, I think, before we go. Oh no, we have two more questions. So why does Kate dive into the water? How does she accomplish her task? So why is she going into that water? We should already know this from what we read earlier in the lesson. I'm gonna go ahead and pause this video and read the text down below. I'm not gonna read it to you this time. So pause it and look down and see if you can find the answers on your own. All right, guys, this is one of the questions I'm not going to go over today because this is something that you guys can do without me. This is something that's right there in the text, so take your time, find that answer, and write it down and have that ready to go for your teacher later. All right, next up. Mary is frequently found near the cliffs on England. Oh, I missed the big important question word there. Why is Mary frequently found near the cliffs on England's south coast? So why is she there? So I want you again, this is something you're going to do without me. You're going to pause it and read this little page here and try and figure out, can you figure out why she is found near the coast? All right, hopefully you pause the video. I will go over this one with you just because you have to think a little bit beyond the text. It was a dangerous place, a wild, windy world. Falling pebbles plink plonked off her bonnet, but Mary didn't care. There were fossils here. Ancient fish teeth and curly shells and animal bones in the rock. Curiosities or curios. The treasure seekers called them. They were odd, dainty things to look at and ooh and ah over, and Mary's family could sell as many as she could find. So why is Mary there? Hopefully you figured out she's there for the fossils, right? But why? Yeah, she's trying to get money for her family, guys. So it's really cool. What started out as just a way to get money for her family actually led her to become a well-known scientist. So really, really cool. All right, it is time for our reading response. So what specific habits does Mary adopt to do her work? So you can find that on the page down below for Mary Anning. So then you have to compare it to how are Kate's actions similar to and different from Mary's actions. This might be a little tough. You might need to stretch your brain, but I know that you can do this. Think back to all the questions and comparisons that we made today and just really dig deep. I know that you can do this, fourth graders. Thank you so much for coming today and comparing our two stories and working so hard. I appreciate you, fourth graders, and I can't wait to see you next time. Have a great day.